desert planet. Experience the award-winning strategy of Dune Imperium as never before. Take board game battles online with friends or hone your tactics against clever AI opponents. Unique challenges test your ability to adapt and survive. Control the spice. Control the universe in Dune Imperium.
Hey everybody, this is Matt from Direwolf, coming to you today for a Dune Imperium Digital stream. Dune Imperium is coming to Steam Early Access on November 14th, so if you haven't wishlisted yours already, go ahead and do that so you'll know when it's out. Today we're going to be looking at solo play, and specifically we're just going to set up an AI game and kind of go through the basics of how to play and what to expect. When the game ships, there's going to be a bunch of other stuff, including skirmish mode and challenges and leaderboards and things like that, but for now, we're just going to play against the AI in a 4-player game to kind of talk through the basics of how the game works. There's 2 different AI types that come in the game. There is the normal AI, and there's also the House Hagal rules, which if you're familiar with that mode from the tabletop game, it's a different way to sort of simulate having opponents. But we are going to play against the hard AI that comes in the game. The first thing that happens in Dune Imperium is you have to select your leader. This will be who you sort of take into battle. There's 8 that come here. Paul Atreides, Beast Raban, Baron Harkonnen, Duke Leto. And each leader has both a passive ability, like Landsrad Popularity, which is always active. So anytime Leto sends an agent to a green board space, it costs him 1 less Solari. And a Signet Ring ability, like Prudent Diplomacy, where when you play your Signet Ring card that has this icon on it, you can pay 1 spice to gain some influence on a faction where someone else is leading you. And they all do different things that we can sort of explore as we go, but for now, I'm going to take Glossu the Beast Raban, always a personal favorite, who starts the game with an additional spice and an additional Solari, and his Signet Ring Brutality allows him to deploy extra troops, or garrison extra troops rather. That's what these cubes are. So either 1 if he doesn't have an alliance, or 2 if he does. So we'll start with Glossu the Beast Raban. I'm going to be playing kind of quickly and going through things here, talking about things as we go, and also answering questions in chat, in text. So if there's something you want to ask about, go ahead and put it there. So at the start of the game, there's a whole lot going on here. So you can see over on the left, these are my opponents. This is me down here. This gold icon is victory points. We all start with 1 in a 4-player game to help maintain game pace. And these are our agents that we can send out to the Imperium. We start the game with 2, and you can gain more. You can gain a 3rd one by purchasing a swordmaster. There are 4 tracks over here on the left that are very important. This is the political influence throughout the Imperium. At the bottom here, we have the Fremen. Here we have the Bene Gesserit in purple, the Spacing Guild in red, and the Emperor himself in black. And when you have a card like Seek Allies, that matches the icons of the spaces you want to go, that can determine where you get to send your agents. So our starting hand, we have Seek Allies, Reconnaissance, Dagger, Convincing Argument, which notably has no icons on it, and Signet Ring. At the bottom of these cards, in the blue area, you'll see that little 2 inside the diamond. If we get to our reveal phase and we have not yet spent this card to send an agent somewhere, we'll be able to use that persuasion to buy new cards from the Imperium row. The Imperium row is this over here on the right. These are the cards that are available. There are 5 cards down here that are available for purchase, plus 2 that are always available until they run out. But there's a pile of the Spice Must Flow, which is worth a victory point, but costs 9, and Arrakis Liaison, which only costs 2 and generates 2 influence, is sort of a safe bet in the early game. Some of the cards that are particularly exciting, Thufir Hawat, I think, is really good, both in terms of the faction influence that it provides, drawing cards, generating intrigue. That's a pretty exciting early one. And then also Power Play, where you can gain 2 influence instead of 1, which can help you win the race to secure a critical alliance. The first thing that's always important to do is take a look down here and figure out what our plan is for getting to a swordmaster. It's not always correct, it's not always necessary. I tend to feel a lot better about things when there's a swordmaster on the way. In this particular situation, we're going to be in pretty good shape to get a swordmaster in the second round, as long as we can come up with some spice here in the first round. So I'm going to start out, well, there's already a lot of troops in the conflict. Baron Harkonnen came in for 4 troops, which gives him a strength of 8. Each troop is worth 2. And Count Ilban came in for 6 strength. So getting into this fight early is not going to be the most satisfying outcome, but it's still probably pretty important. So I think we're going to be looking at still suits and Haga Basin is how I feel we're probably going to get started here. I feel like I'm more likely to get cut on still suits, so I'm going to go there. Seek Allies also trashes itself, which reduces the size of your deck, which is always good. And I think it's worth coming in for 1 here, as we're trying to do early game stuff like get a Swordmaster and take a seat on the High Council, all of which costs Solari. So that's the currency of the Imperium. So in these first couple of rounds, we're going to be looking to generate some money. There's a conflict every round in Dune Imperium that determines what you're fighting over from round to round. The game will play out in a series of up to 10 rounds, each defined by a conflict. The skirmish gives you an influence on any of our political tracks if you come in first, and then Solari based on how you finish. If you finish first, you get 2, second for 3, third for 2. So we're not going to win this conflict, but we might get a couple of bucks out of it. And then with my second agent action, I'm going to send an agent to Haga Basin to collect some spice. I'm going to get another troop from my signet ring because of brutality, but I'm not going to deploy the troop. I'm just going to pass. One of the things you always have to sort of manage as the game unfolds is what cards you're using to send your agents out to gather resources, and what cards you're holding to reveal later in the round. So for example, with Reconnaissance, that gives me 1 Persuasion, and Convincing Argument, that gives me 3, or it gives me 2. I have a total of 3 to work with. One of the 3, there's a nice 3-cost card up here that just got purchased by one of my opponents, so this is going to be a underwhelming reveal phase here, but that's okay. We're going to be in pretty good shape for round 2. So our choices here are Arrakis Recruiter, because again, we only have 3 to spend. This costs 2 in the upper right corner. Arrakis Recruiter or Arrakis Liaison. Arrakis Recruiter is okay. I tend to like Arrakis Liaison because it's more relevant still late game when you're looking to buy the Spice Must Flow. So I'm going to do that. Now it's time for the conflict, where we're going to see what happens. Nobody has any intrigue cards to play. The skirmish results in a decisive victory for Baron Harkonnen, who's going to take 2 Solari and a bump on one of the influence tracks. He's taking over the Emperor. And now, because he's gotten to 2 influence, he gains another victory point. There's not that many victory points to get in Dune Imperium, so they're all pretty important. Each one can be critical. So here we are in round 2, where we might end up having to see if we can race Ilban to the Swordmaster, because he's got 6 Solari already. If he generates some more, it looks like he's not able to. He's just taking a High Council seat, so that's great for us. So with 3 spice and 3 Solari, we need to turn some of this spice into Solari, and you can do that up at the Cell Melange space. So by playing one of these yellow triangle cards, we can go up here, spend 3 spice for 8 Solari, which takes us to 11, and allow us to get a Swordmaster with our second action. This is a pretty decent opening, all things considered, especially if Hardy Warriors is still available when it's time for our diplomacy to begin. Harkonnen often gets out to a fast start. He's already at 3 victory points, or everybody else only has 1. But we're not too worried about that just yet. So by coming here, I'm paying 8 Solari to hire my Swordmaster, which now gives me a 3rd agent every round for the rest of the game, including this round. So I'll be able to take the last action this round, which can be pretty good. One of the things that's often really important, especially as you're trying to plan your way into the conflict and measure everybody's strength and see what you're going to do, is having that last action. There's a couple of ways you can go about getting it. There's some intrigue cards that let you delay and wait and bide your time. Having a Swordmaster so that you have more actions than everybody else can be very important. And then additionally, there's this space here, the Mentat. If you go to the Mentat, you have to spend 2 Solari, but you draw a card, and you get to get a temporary extra worker just for that round. And that can create these little sort of tempo swings that can be very important. Okay, so down here, you can see everybody else is out of agents. We still have 1 left. Harkonnen is in the conflict with only a single troop, which means that Hardy Warriors is going to be good. So if we come in for Hardy Warriors, we're going to get first a victory point for getting to the second threshold, or the first threshold, the second tier. And then we can deploy any troops that we recruit, plus up to 2 from our garrison. We had 3 sitting in our garrison already. We just got 2 more. We don't need to come in for all that many, because Harkonnen is the only one in the conflict at 2 strength. He has no intrigue cards in hand, and no further actions to play. So with 2 troops coming in, it'll bring our conflict strength to 4, and should allow us to win this conflict, which will give us 2 influence. Let's see what everybody else is doing. Again, not much to reveal, only 3, and I think it's going to be a second Arrakis liaison. I think 2 Arrakis liaisons is generally fine, and any more than that, I start to question what have I been doing with my time. But everybody will have different strategies and different ideas as far as that goes. All right, so look at this. So we are winning the fight with our strength of 4, and we get to choose 2 that we can take our influence with. We're at a point right now where it's pretty wide open. I'm not super inclined to fight over this Emperor track because Harkonnen is already pretty far ahead there. But I think we can make a case for fighting over this Fremen Alliance, and either Bene Gesserit or the Spacing Guild is kind of dealer's choice at this point. I'm actually going to go with the Bene Gesserit, which is because I have a soft spot for trashing cards, and selective breeding is a great way to go about that. You can pay 2 spice, trash a card, draw 2 cards, and gain an influence with the Bene Gesserit. So here we are in round 3. In round 3, we're fighting the Siege of Arrakeen, where first place gets you a victory point and control of Arrakeen. Second place gets you 4 Solari, and third place gets you 2 Solari. When you take control of a place, these little flags down here will come up. Which one's Arrakeen? I always have to check. This one's Arrakeen. So if you're fighting for control of Arrakeen and you take it, then anyone who goes to that space will pay you 1 Solari, including you, which can be a nice way to get like some extra mileage out of your cards along the way. So one of the things with Raban, because he has his brutality ability pays you extra if you have a faction alliance, is seeing if there's a way to take a faction alliance before you play a signet ring. In our case, we would be able to grab this Fremen alliance if we had a Fremen icon in our hand, but sadly we do not. So I think just sort of continuing on the theme of seeing what we can... We're kind of ramping up more so than doing a ton right now, and I think that's going to be just a matter of taking some Solari so that we can hopefully get this High Council seat this turn with this dagger, and then that might leave us in a pretty good position. Spice is really starting to accumulate down here in the Great Flat. It's right now worth 5 spice if you can spend 2 water to go get it. Sadly, we have no water, and we're kind of we might be able to get the Siege Tabor this round and get something going there. But for now, we're just going to send our dagger to the High Council, pay 5 Solari, and now every turn or every round for the rest of the game, we will get 2 extra persuasion that we can use in the reveal turn to help us get going and buy some better cards along the way. So by round 3 here, we've taken a High Council seat, we've gotten a swordmaster, and we earned a victory point from, we're doing well on this Fremen Alliance track down here, so we're off to a pretty good start. Feeling okay about things so far. Now, if we revealed now, we'd be revealing for 6, which would get us something like Worm Riders. Worm Riders is a pretty exciting card, especially if you have the Fremen Alliance, which we almost do. Every time you reveal it, it's worth 6 extra strength. and it generates spice when you play it. That's pretty good. But I personally am a sucker for both power play and Peter, who gives you intrigue cards every time you play him and 3 persuasion. So I'm not real worried about spending one of my cards and going down to 5, especially because we've got an opportunity to come here, generate a troop, and deploy. And I think we're going to come in on this in a pretty big way because it's still early enough that we might be able to just steal a victory point here. Ilban's already at strength 7 and has revealed, so if we go to strength 8, I think there's a pretty good chance we can take this thing. He might have a intrigue card, but we'll find out. Alright. So, one of the cards got purchased. I also do really like Bene Gesserit's sister. I love shifting allegiances. This card is so much fun. You can lose influence on one track, pay 2 spice, and gain 2 influence on another track. There's some really fun swindles that you can pull off that way. But I'm a simple man, and I'm just going to take power play because that card is basically always good. And let's see how the conflict goes. We got there. All right, so we gain a victory point and a control marker on Arakeen. So now we have control of Arakeen. We'll plant our flag there, and we've got a victory point to show for it. The Guild Bank Raid. This is sort of a deceptive conflict here. It's super important when you're still trying to do stuff like get a swordmaster, take a high council seat, or if there are certain cards or strategies you have that really care about Solari. We're kind of past that at this point, and I don't know that we need to be all that concerned about this fight and the way it's going to shape up. We do have 9 persuasion available right now, which means we could just buy the Spice Must Flow, which is always an exciting option. You don't not want the spice to flow. So, but I think what we're going to do is see if we can get a little bit of value out of this turn before just revealing. So, though we might be revealing early. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by sending a diplomat over here. And here's the idea. Coming here was going to give us some water. Let us take the Fremen Alliance, which will also pay us water. And depending on how the turn goes, next action we might be using a dagger to go to the Hall of Oratory, which will get us back to 9 persuasion and let us reveal early to buy the Spice Must Flow. If that's appealing, we'll see how it goes. I am going to send in a troop, just in case. Life is cheap on Arrakis. We'll see if it gets us anything. If these, if my AI opponents really want to fight over this Solari, they are more than welcome to. Yeah, that was good. So, Harkonnen just came and harvested all this spice down here. We didn't have a triangle icon to go do that, so it wasn't an option, sadly. So there's a couple of options here. We're sitting on 8 persuasion because we have 2, 4, 6, plus 2 from the High Council. So that's 8. And 1 dagger, which is going to bring our combat strength up to 3 presently. We don't really care about this combat. Sometimes you want to hold dagger cards to give you an edge in combat. That doesn't really matter here. So we could send Arrakis Liaison to something like Research Station. We've got the water for it. Let us draw 3 cards. But the thing is the cards that we're drawing are not going to be that great. I mean, I might get power play, but we're probably going to draw that next round anyway. Or, you know, it's not too far off. So the thing that's pretty appealing to me is just using the dagger to come up here to the Hall of Oratory. We're doing a lot of diplomacy at sword point, at knife point here, which is kind of an interesting metaphor. So now we're back to 9 persuasion that we're going to have available to buy a Spice Must Flow. So we are revealing early. We're wasting this agent. I think that's fine in this situation. So we'll just take a Spice Must Flow. That'll get us a victory point. We're up to 5. And the turn can proceed. Between taking a High Council seat and getting a Swordmaster right out of the gate, we got a lot of initial acceleration, even though we weren't really generating, you know, a ton of victory points. We didn't really buy any good cards in the first couple of rounds of the conflict, or the first couple of conflicts. But it's setting us up to play a game that accelerates and ramps as we go here. We're starting to see that as we're hopefully going to pull away a little bit over the next couple of rounds. I am concerned about the spice situation if we want to be looking to do things like the Highliner. If you have 6 spice available and you go to the Highliner, it can generate 5 troops that you can deploy immediately into the conflict, plus up to 2 additional troops coming from your garrison. That can be a big swing coming in. So you see here, we all kind of just committed as lightly as we could to the conflict, and we all got 4 Solari out of it. Alright, secure Imperial Basin. We're into the 2nd tier conflicts now. There's 3 levels of conflict. We're in the sort of middle game as things start to take their shape. Paul is struggling. Despite getting his Swordmaster, he hasn't really been able to get on the board very well. Harkonnen is always a threat, and Ilban is certainly capable of some swindles along the way. Oh, Harkonnen is fighting us over here for the alliance with the Fremen. One of the things that you'll always have to sort of balance is which alliances, which political affiliations are you going to fight over, what are you going to let go, and how is that going to inform things. Okay, so here we have a situation. Haga Basin looks pretty good to me right now, because the idea of power playing into selective breeding and then passing Ilban on the Bene Gesserit track, trashing one of these daggers or something, it feels like there's some long-term improvements to our position we can do down here, but we need spice. Getting 3 spice for 1 water is a decent deal, but 2 spice for no water is also a pretty good deal. In this case, I've got 3 water, and there's water available in this conflict. It might not be correct. I'm going to take 3 spice for 1 water and deploy a troop to see if we can maybe swindle back this water in 3rd place or something. Not trying to win this conflict, but trying to get some resources out of it, hopefully. Yeah, look at everybody's gathering spice down here. We all came and took all the spice. So let's see where this gets us. I am going to trash this dagger. Daggers, the access to green spaces are super important when you're trying to take a High Council seat or hire a Swordmaster, but as the game goes on, they sort of fall off in value. So going here and saying we're going to fight Ilban for this Bene Gesserit alliance seems good. So this lets us trash a card to draw 2 cards. You can trash cards from your discard pile, which is currently empty, from your hand, which is usually not great, or from cards you've already played this turn. In this case, I'm actually going to trash this dagger from my hand, because I would prefer not to draw it again this game. Alright, let's see what we're working with down here. So we're up to 2, 4, 6, 7, 8 influence. It's not really the right amount of influence, sadly. But we've got some things we can do about that, maybe. So, here we are. We could either do something like reconnaissance to the research station, which would allow me to draw 3 cards, which would definitely, or I guess not definitely, I could hit a dagger, a spice must flow, and a Dune, and that would fail to get me to the threshold of 9 persuasion. It's not great if I draw power play, but we'll see what happens. Chances must be taken. Okay, so we're going to be fine. We get 1,000,000 influence now. We're at 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 11, 12 influence, which is going to be more than enough to buy a Spice Must Flow and maybe even a Bene Gesserit Sister. I do like this card because it gives you access to the Bene Gesserit track, which we're currently fighting over, but Baron Harkonnen just bought it from me. He bought it out from under me, so what are you going to do? The Baron is crafty. He knows what he's up against. Endgame triggers when somebody gets to 10 victory points, so we're not that far off, though closing out games can be tricky as everybody starts fighting more frantically over things. So I think what we're going to do here is we're probably going to take a guild administrator, a spice must flow, and then maybe even this assassination mission, though I'm not convinced about that at this point. We've already got 7 Solari. Assassination mission is usually one of my favorite cards, because when you trash it, you get 4 Solari. So when you buy something like a guild administrator, which lets you trash cards natively, you can sort of have a little combo where assassination mission is in your discard pile, you trash it away, and you get paid for it. That all feels really good. But I think we're going to start with this guild administrator and see what happens. Missionary Protectiva, very good card if you're playing a sort of Bene Gesserit combo deck. It gives you free influence, basically, if you have a bunch of Bene Gesserit cards. We don't have any. So we're just going to take the Spice Must Flow and the point, go to 7. And I don't think I want this assassination mission because there's other stuff I'd rather be trashing, and I don't really need the Solari. So Paul wins the conflict, but we come out of it with a water, which is actually pretty good for us, because it didn't cost us much at all, and we might not even need to win a conflict again in this game. So Cloak and Dagger, influence and intrigue cards, always exciting. One of the things that's always really important to do when you're playing Dune Imperium is figure out what your route to the end game is, and the better sense you have of how you get from wherever you're at to the end of the game is a really important skill. So right now we're in really good shape. We've got 7 victory points. There's one we could get right here by taking the Bene Gesserit Alliance, and then it's not too hard to get to these thresholds, although we haven't really been buying cards that help us too much in that direction. We just bought the Guild Administrator, which will help us on this Space and Guild track, and we don't really have a plan for the Emperor just yet. So we're not far away from being able to close out this game, and that feels pretty good. I think where we're going to start here is either with the Mentat to draw a card and get an agent back, because his dagger is pretty much dead in our hand, or Arakeen to draw a card, generate some troops, and go fight over some stuff. I'm going to just start with the Mentat, and if somebody wants to go to Arakeen, they can pay me a Solari, because I have the control marker there. Alright, Arrakis Liaison doesn't really do a ton here, but we'll see where it can go. So Harkonnen is going to go lock up the Emperor Alliance, and nobody can really challenge that too much right now. That's probably fine. Alright, so we are looking at 8 Persuasion, which is so close to 9 Persuasion. But there's not really anything we can do about that. I guess if we do Signet Ring into Arakeen and draw a card, that'll give us some more information and see what we're working with. If we draw a 2 Persuasion card, that might just get us a Spice Must Flow right here. So you can resolve things in any order. So the options I have are deploy troops, generate 2 troops, because I do have an alliance with the Fremen, so that means my Signet Ring Brutality goes off, or draw a card. I'm going to draw a card first. Ooh, look at that. We got there. Okay. So I'm going to generate 2 troops. I'm going to send them in. We should at least get second place out of this. Maybe, I don't know. We'll see. Depends on how much everybody wants to fight over it. But again, I don't think combat is going to be a necessary component of us getting to 10 victory points in this game. But we will see how that shakes out in a second. It would certainly not hurt. Wow, okay, so we're all getting challenged for the Bene Gesserit. That's an interesting situation. 3 players fighting over the Alliance for the Bene Gesserit right here, as we're all 1 spot away from claiming the Alliance. Once you've claimed an Alliance, it can be taken from you if somebody passes you on the track, but somebody tying you is not quite enough to get there. So, it feels like a lot of wasted energy to reveal when you have available agents. But to me, the question here is, what are we going to get out of these agents that's better than revealing for a victory point? Because we could reveal for 9 Persuasion and buy the Spice Must Flow, which would put us at 8. And I think that's probably better. Although I think there is an argument you could make for passing up on the Spiceless Flow to set up better for future turns, do something like come here, get some water, get some spice, you know, be harvesting resources for the actual end game. But I think we have a chance to close it out early in a way that having fewer resources won't come back to hurt us so much. But we will have to see. What happens with this Bene Gesserit track is going to be, I think, pretty important to determining if this sort of plan that we're on here for getting to 10 is going to hold. If that falls apart, or especially if the Fremen Alliance gets taken from us, we're going to be in pretty bad shape. So we will see what happens. If I manage to win this conflict with only what we've got here, if nobody has intrigue cards, that's going to be pretty huge. So we will see how it goes. We're holding at 6. Oh, and we got there. All right. So we get a bump on an influence track of our choice, which will be the Bene Gesserit, and 2 intrigue cards. So there's a possibility of doing something like taking a Spacing Guild bump and getting a victory point here next turn when we draw into the Guild Administrator or Diplomacy, but I think we just want to lock up this alliance if we can and make that harder for other people to fight over. Oh, and these are great intrigue cards. Bindu Suspension. We draw a card and we can pass, which can give us a tempo advantage. Oh, this is just gross. And we just got Demand Respect, which we can play immediately because we just won a conflict. And for 2 spice, we can get 2 influence on another on a track. So that was pretty much the perfect card to draw. And I think we're going to take this Emperor because we have some options on the Spacing Guild. So we're going to gain 2 influence with the Emperor, which will get us to a 9th victory point. Oh, that actually takes us to 10. And there you have it. I thought we were 1 short. So we were able to close it out with the perfect intrigue card off the top, taking us to 10. And yeah, you can see there's many paths to victory. This was a relatively not combat-centric game for the Beast. Instead, buying a lot of politically focused, the power play purchase, and then the sort of economic engine of generating persuasion to buy Spice Must Flows, along with some selective application of strength on the victory tracks. But again, I think a big part of what happened here is we were able to have that round 2 swordmaster play that got us into the High Council in round 3, and then sort of let our opponents fight over the battlefield while we generated points elsewhere from around the Imperium. So yeah, there's lots of strategies, there's lots of ways you can play. That's the one that happened to get us there this time. But I hope you guys have enjoyed this sort of first look at the basics of Dune Imperium Digital, which will be coming to Steam Early Access in just a couple of weeks on November 14th. We hope to see you in the game when it launches and get it on your wish lists between now and then. And if you have any questions or want to talk about what we did here today, we'd love to see you in the Dire Wolf Discord, which you can find from our website or on Discord, or in Board Game Geek or any of the other places where folks hang out and talk about Dune Imperium. So thanks for joining us. Hope you get your wish lists in, and we'll see you on November 14th.